Part 17. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 161. According to Lan Dai's wish, the new comic manuscript of PCP completed the color transformation before publication, from the previous gloomy and dark style to the bright and hopeful style. Also according to Nazuma Eiji's idea, Crow started a low-key and gorgeous transformation before it was released. Also according to Takahashi Makoto's idea, the new serialized comic manuscript of Ushio and Tora still uses a rough style of painting, entering the era of wild killing monsters. After the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, Yachin Menjai entered the tormenting waiting, especially Lan Dai, who was responsible for drawing. The ranking of the comic PCP has not been very stable during this period. When it was just serialized, the editors in the editorial department felt the brutal explosive power of the two. However, after the slaughter journey of Full Metal Alchemist began, although PCP fought back with backbone, with the end of Full Metal Alchemist, this comic gradually began to go downhill. Since the problem with the painting style was discovered before, Lan Dai proposed to change the painting style. Although I am very satisfied with the revised comic manuscript, that level of satisfaction only satisfies the two good friends. The comic rankings calculated by the reader survey are the real existence that determines everything. So when the results were released, although Lan Dai wanted to calm down and draw seriously, his uneasy heart could not be calmed down, and when the yellow-haired glasses man's phone rang, Lan Dai's heart was even more in his throat. Really? The ranking has risen to 6th place. The yellow-haired glasses man was surprised at first, and then fell into ecstasy. Lan Dai, who also showed a happy smile on his face, finally let go of the string that had been tense in his heart. His right hand unconsciously clenched the brush, and a relieved smile appeared on his face. Just by changing the style of one episode, the ranking of the comic began to rise. Lan Dai, who realized this, looked at his good friend who was still on the phone with some apology. What he had been unsure of in his heart, he finally understood now. It seems that there is no problem with Chi Ren's plot, and the problem is, it is my painting. 3 o'clock in the afternoon? I see, I'll tell the Supreme. After Akito hung up the phone, he received Lan Dai's inquiring gaze, and helplessly spread his hands, explaining with a puzzled look, I don't know, but Mr. Hattori's tone sounds a little anxious. The two didn't know what Hattori was anxious about. After a brief discussion, the duo of Yachin Menjai decided to continue drawing the next chapter of PCP Comics and not to make random guesses. After all, there was less than an hour before the meeting time in the afternoon. Instead of spending time guessing what Mr. Hattori was anxious about, it would be better to start drawing the next chapter of the comics as soon as possible. And Takahashi Makoto next door looked at the sample issue of Shonen Jump brought by Yoshida, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. The comic that Takahashi Makoto was reading was not his new series Uo and Tora, but Crow by Eiji Nazuma. In this chapter, Eiji Nazuma took an amazing measure. There is no dialogue in the entire episode of Crow, and the content of the episode was completed just by mastering the storyboard. Although the comics without dialogues may not be understood at first glance, but with the strong control of Nazuma Eiji for comics, the comic characters only need a look and a movement to make the content of this episode look very smooth. At least several assistants in Takahashi Makoto's family said that they can fully understand the story of this episode of Koro. He actually released his ultimate move at this time. He is worthy of being the king of Black Flame. He has completely mastered the essence of surprise attack. Takahashi Makoto pouted unhappily, with a hint of depression on his face. Speaking of the content of this episode, you chose to present it in this way. Are you really dissatisfied with the style of the previous Full Metal Alchemist? Although I have guessed a little bit before, it is still a bit surprising to achieve such a degree. The skill of full screen silence is released at the critical period of the team battle, and the effect is outstanding. Takahashi Makoto said that except for the Otaku Jinghi River who liked games nodded in agreement, Other assistants including editor Yoshida said that they did not understand it at all. "Mr. Yoshida, may I ask about the new serialized comics?" Ueno Aoi looked at Yoshida with curiosity, and she was inexplicably worried. In the past, as long as Takahashi Makoto's comics were not too exaggerated, Yoshida would tell everyone the first time he entered the door, but this time he didn't say it for a long time. The result is undoubtedly, naturally, the super unsatisfactory one. After all, if a comic of this style can win the first place in Shonen Jump, it can only be said that it is a golden finger, right? Aiken, your new series Uo and Tora, the results achieved this time. Yoshida said this, his face was a little unnatural, and his tone was a little disappointed. It's 7th. Yashiro Mumanji's PCP is one place higher than yours. Ueno Aoi and Shizukawa looked at each other, and then lowered their heads at the same time. Generally speaking, the first chapter of a new serialized comic can easily grab the top 3 positions, especially for popular cartoonists like Takahashi Makoto who have been serializing for a long time. If a new comic is launched, readers will pay more or less attention to it, so the results will not be too different, but this result, 7th place? It's indeed the same as the result that was initially detected. Makoto Takahashi didn't have any dissatisfaction, he just rubbed his chin with some doubts, with a thoughtful look on his face. But the idiot and the gay friend controlling this ranking, is the sudden surge in strength due to the realization of the power of despair and sadness, or is it due to the accidental explosion of the small universe? It must be a coincidence. After all. Before Yoshida could finish his words, he saw Makoto Takahashi flipping through PCP and had to swallow the second half of the sentence. However, after reading this issue of PCP, Makoto Takahashi had a strange expression on his face. He glanced at the next door from time to time, and even put his ear to the wall openly while Yoshida and many assistants looked at him strangely. By the way, what's going on with this kind of guilty conscience? I suddenly thought of a very important thing, and that is the 2 people of Ajumu-menha. Takahashi Makoto had an uncertain expression on his face, which made everyone confused, as if Takahashi Makoto was going to say something shocking next. Shocking news. Aiken Mumenji, is there any problem? Yoshida squinted his eyes and looked at Makoto Takahashi with some confusion. Yoshida doesn't have many opportunities to come into contact with Konoha Meng of Aiken, but he still has some understanding of the pair of good friends next door. They are 2 very hard-working people. But Makoto Takahashi's tone of voice really made Yoshida concerned. Walls have ears, you have to be on guard, said these words seriously. Takahashi Makoto had no scruples about the lethality of his words, and had already broken through the boundaries of full-screen petrification magic. After pondering for a long time, Makoto Takahashi lowered his voice and said slowly, the gay group named Ajumu-menha has a hidden attribute that is absolutely amazing. I knew it would be such a weird answer. Yoshida, whose face was full of black lines, couldn't help but slander him in his heart. He expected Makoto Takahashi to communicate normally, so he might as well go home early and wash up and sleep. I have faced powerful enemies several times, and it is only when I am beaten until my nose is bruised and my face is swollen that I am no longer human, that I suddenly awaken and burst out with powerful fighting power. Just like the Saiyans, the more violently they are beaten and whipped, the more terrifying their fighting power becomes. And even be able to master multiple transformations later on, Takahashi said with a confident expression, such a situation happened before when Steel was finished. I just had doubts at the time, but this time, it has been proven that those damn gays are definitely a worthy combination. The petrification skill has exceeded the level limit and is about to evolve into Death Gaze. Cheng, although the Tide and the Tiger only got the 7th place, it doesn't matter, this is just the beginning. Just like the original Hansakata, accumulate more and more, and slowly turn around. Yoshida's mouth kept twitching, trying to suppress the urge to turn black. he slapped Makoto Takahashi's shoulders hard with both hands. It was more like a roar than an encouragement. It really doesn't matter. Work hard for the next Inuyasha and Slicker. I'll pick up the new comic manuscript another day. My beloved cat, hey, he actually ran away so fast. Seeing Yoshida panicking and using his escape skills, Makoto Takahashi looked stunned before he could stop him. Then his tone showed disbelief. I never expected that is the hidden attribute of the familiar cat, not that he is a villain, but that he is an expert in escaping. The assistants looked at each other and got into work consciously. Don't talk to Makoto Takahashi, who is in a state of shock, otherwise you will fall into the abyss of Shuyuni and be unable to extricate yourself. This is the first article of cartoonist Phoenix Academy's Kumamoto Assistants Self-Rescue Rules compiled privately by the assistants. By the way, the person who proposed this great code was classmate Lee Byung-yin, who has returned to his hometown to get married. I see, are you already planning to betray me? Makoto Takahashi looked at the assistants, who were busy working with their heads down and were completely ignored, with an expression of resentment on his face. Loneliness, this is the fierceness of my Phoenix Academy, really, is it the price I have to bear? I will give up everything, risk my life and soul, and return this world to chaos. This is Steins Gate's choice, ha 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 ha. While Takahashi Makoto was laughing wildly, the Ajumumenha duo next door were clutching the sample magazine in their hands, with very strange expressions on their faces. This time Eiji Arizuma took such a bold approach, leaving no lines or dialogue in the manga, but the manga's ranking rose instead of falling. Although PCP lost to Crow this time, it can be regarded as winning against Tide and Wave Tiger, haha. Hattori was indeed a little worried at first. If Ajakana Hayum couldn't fulfill the agreement with the editor-in-chief, he would be kicked out of Shounen Jump. However, after watching the new serialization of Tide and Tora by Hohoin Ojima, Hattori felt a lot relieved, because the previous results have already said it all. What on earth is that guy Aiken thinking? Looking at the comic manuscript in his hand, Landai's face was full of doubts. With Aiken's level, he can obviously draw more delicately, but why did he choose this style of painting? Woolen cloth. Who knows what that guy Chen is thinking? The monsters in comics like Inuyasha and Slicker, Monsters. Halfway through the words, the man with yellow-haired glasses suddenly remembered something. He stood up and went to the bookshelf. He took out the previously released Junk and looked through it carefully. The more he looked at it, the weirder his face became. Hey, that guy Aiken, could he be thinking, no, he will definitely do this. The man with yellow hair and glasses didn't know how to tell his best friend about the guess in his mind, so he could only smile bitterly. Want to know more exciting updates of a certain secondary cartoonist? Open WeChat now, click the plus sign in the upper right corner, select Add Friends to add a public account, search for Kidian Zongween Wang, follow the public account, and you will never miss any updates. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Mao. Chapter 162. Since the end of Full Metal Alchemist, Lee Suezong has not read Shonen Jump for a long time. Needless to say, it is because of the new serialization, the comic Uo and Tora. Full Metal Alchemist by cartoonist Hao Wing-kuma is a masterpiece in Lee Suezong's heart. So when Full Metal Alchemist was finished, Lee Suezong was curious and started to read other comics by Hao Wing-kuma, but whether it was Inuyasha or Nura, Rise of the Yokai Clan, Lee Suezong had no interest in these two comics about monsters. Although the comic Full Metal Alchemist is a bit fantasy, it is at least within Lee Suezong's acceptance range, but Lee Suezong said that he has no love for comics about supernatural existence such as monsters and ghosts. As for the new serialization of the comic Uo and Tora, Lee Suezong gave up decisively after reading the first episode. The plot at the beginning was too cliché. The protagonist, Chao Kangyu, had a legendary artifact at home. While obtaining the artifact, the protagonist also captured a powerful monster. Although he insisted on reading the first episode, Li Suizong was a little disappointed. According to the popular youth comics nowadays, the cooler and stronger characters will become funny characters once they join the protagonist's team or become one of the protagonists, and the degree of funniness is proportional to the original coolness. Even a powerful monster like Ahu can't escape. And what's wrong with this style of painting? Li Suizong was full of expectations at the time, hoping that Feng Guangai Yuanxiangjin's new comic Chow and Tiger would be drawn in the same type of comics as Full Metal Alchemist, but after just reading the beginning, Li Suizong almost threw away the Shonen Jump that he had finally grabbed. Damn! Compared with Full Metal Alchemist, what's the matter with this rough style of painting? This level of style of painting is completely unacceptable. Reader Li Suizong, although he insisted on finishing one chapter, he no longer wanted to read the following content. He originally planned to stick to the end, but now, he died midway. Of course, there are many readers who share the same idea as Li Suizong. The previous Full Metal Alchemist made readers very excited, both in terms of content and style, so they naturally have strong expectations for the new serialized comics. In addition, the comics serialized by Makoto Takahashi in recent years have a more delicate style. Although the character design is a bit weird, no matter which comic, there are more or less handsome men and beautiful women appearing. But after the first episode of the newly serialized Ushio Totoro was published, many readers were stunned. As the three comics of the yokai era, Shimaru, who is very handsome in Inuyasha, has captured the hearts of many female readers with his handsome appearance and cold personality, and Nurarikuo, who has transformed into the Lord of Demons and Monsters in Nura, always appears with an evil smile, and then conquers many monsters and readers with his cool and generous personality. But the characters in Ushio Totoro have only appeared in one episode, and they have been strongly complained by readers. As the protagonist, Ushio Aitsuki, gives people the impression of being the protagonist of a boys' comic at first glance, but the monster named Ahu and the mysterious monsters that appeared later, unceremoniously destroyed the beautiful perception of monsters in the readers' minds through the two comics. It's like when you know you're going to date a girl with twin tails, you subconsciously think of a girl with a bad temper, such as Tosaka Rin and Tosaka Rin. But when you meet, you find that she is completely different from Rin in the photo. Although she also has twin tails, but, ahem, that's right, the twin tails you meet, your fantasy is shattered, it's not the tsundere Mount Kuriko, but Yuki's childhood sweetheart Io. Damn, such a curious twin tail, there is nothing more terrifying than this. The reader's evaluation of how Winkuma and Ushio Totoro is, the painting style is a bit bad, the story is old-fashioned, Kuma is old, can he still make a living? The editor-in-chief didn't say anything about the performance of Ushio Totoro, but Yoshida still felt uncomfortable. After all, the manga artist named Hao Winkuma, the first chapter of the previous serialized comics, has always occupied the first place without exception. However, this time, Uo and Tora has directly dropped to the first place. Although the editor-in-chief did not make any comments on this, Yoshida could fully perceive the true nature of the smiles on the faces of his colleagues, gloating. At this moment, I could feel that I, the weak me who made the wrong choice, had been abandoned by the whole world. Yoshida muttered in his mouth, as if he had lost his soul, and slowly walked out of the door of the editorial department. When Yoshida came to Takahashi Makoto's house in disappointment, the resentment on his body was very strong. Even Sadaharu, who had always been listless about everything, made an exception and looked at Yoshida twice and then continued to sleep on the ground. Tisk, my cat, have you reached the age where people dislike you? You exude ominous energy all over your body, the brainwashing drugs used by the organization to control you really have extremely powerful side effects. Without stopping his brush, Takahashi Makoto just looked back at Yoshida, and continued to work. The manga manuscript of Ushio Totoro is on the table, according to the previous agreement. Ah Cheng, about the style of Ushio Tutora. Yoshida flipped through the manga manuscript casually, his face became even more disappointed. He thought that the 7th place ranking would stimulate Takahashi Makoto to change the style, but there was no change at all. Objection: Takahashi Makoto didn't even raise his head, put the finished comic draft on the ground, handed it to Sadaharu to deliver, and continued to draw on the new manuscript paper. Because 3 comics are serialized at the same time, Takahashi Makoto will not finish the storyboard first and then draw the comic draft like before. After all, there is no time at all. Why? Yoshida's tone was a little disappointed, but more of it was anger. The ranking of the first episode is already 7th. I am sure that as long as the style of painting is slightly changed and the painting is a little more delicate, the ranking will be able to rise. Why do you? My stubborn cat, this world has become so corrupt, but you are still so irritable. Takahashi Makoto sighed with some regret, put down the brush to rest for a while, and kept teasing the glass on his head. After a long while, he comforted quietly, "This is not good, not good, it will gradually step into the abyss of destruction. If you want to implement the theme of love and peace, you must be calm and peaceful. The state of unity between man and nature is not something that a mortal like you can understand. What is going on?" Takahashi Makoto, who usually clamors to destroy mankind and return the world to chaos, actually wants to implement love and peace? Looking at Takahashi Makoto, who was quietly painting after resting enough, Yoshida's mouth twitched wildly. The whole character setting is wrong. Takahashi Makoto. Yoshida suddenly walked in front of Takahashi Makoto and stared at him seriously. "Can you draw comics more seriously? Where is the devil who wanted to dominate the comics world? Where is the second-year boy who wanted to challenge the comic giant? Your once proud and conceited soul is crying. Where is the ferocious beast hidden in your heart?" It seems that Yoshida is also very hard-working to be able to say such second-year words. Ueno Aoi, who knew the reason for Takahashi Makoto's change, looked at Yoshida in surprise, shook her head sympathetically, and continued to work with her head down. Meow, it was not Liuli who made such a cry, but Takahashi Makoto, who had awakened the beast in his heart. Takahashi Makoto, who squatted on the chair with his fists clenched to imitate cat claws, looked maliciously cute, which made Yoshida feel cold. It's not that Takahashi Makoto's cute skills are not high, but a one-eyed human-faced cat keeps blinking and looking at people with an innocent face. In addition to making people feel cold, it is not cute at all. Puff. The assistants with low sense of laughter couldn't help laughing. Yoshida fell into an awkward vortex in the laughter of the assistants, and the corners of his mouth kept twitching. Mr. Yoshida, can I talk to you for a minute?" Ueno Aoi couldn't help it, got up and pulled Yoshida aside, suppressed the smile on her face, secretly glanced at Takahashi Makoto, who was still teasing Liuli, and whispered, "Because Rina was taken back by Mr. Ogata yesterday, Aiken is a little." "Are you saying that Aiken has become like this because Rina left?" Yoshida looked back and found that Takahashi Makoto was quietly drawing comics again, with as much entanglement on his face as possible. "It's just a separation from Rina, not a farewell forever. Is it necessary to be like this? Don't say it's a second-year personality, the character setting has completely changed." Although he wanted to complain about Takahashi Makoto's performance, Yoshida didn't say anything in the end. Instead, he picked up the comic manuscript on the table and flipped through it. "Mr. Yujiro, when can I get the sample copy of the new issue of Shonen Jump?" Nazuma Eiji hugged his legs and swayed on the chair, looking at Yujiro with a disappointed look on his face. "I'm looking forward to the new comics of Howin and Ajoki. Ajoki Yumhaspi CP has risen a little in the rankings in the last chapter. But Howin Kuma's Ushio and Tora has a ranking of..." Yujiro looked at Nazuma Eiji with a puzzled look on his face and asked in surprise, "But the ranking of these two comics is quite different from your crow." "Why? Mr. Yujiro, you all don't know, Does the editorial department think that the rise in the ranking of PCP is just a coincidence? AG Nyaizuma looked at Yujiro with a proud look on his face, and Mr. How earns Ushio Tutora, this comic is a very powerful opponent. Because of that style, Ushio Tutora will surpass Crow in the future. Although AG Nyaizuma has a special ability to predict comics, Yujiro is a little skeptical this time. Yujiro has also read the comic Ushio Tutora. The opening of the Orthodox Youth comic looks a bit old-fashioned, but that's fine, but the rough style of painting is the flaw of this comic. When Yujiro was reading the comic, he also considered that if the painting became more detailed and the style became more exquisite, maybe this comic could achieve better results. However, Yujiro does not believe that such a cliched story, coupled with a crude style of painting, can be successfully serialized without being cut off. It is already very good. Uo and Tora can actually surpass Crow, and because of the crude style of painting, this possibility is basically zero. Dog Monster, 100 Demons Night Parade, a pair of pants, super handsome beast spear sauce. As usual, he kept making strange noises and began to draw quickly on the paper. However, what is different this time is that the keywords mentioned by Nazuma AG are all related to the comics of Hao Winkuma. Can Hao Winkuma's Uo and Tora really surpass Nazuma AG's Crow with such a style of painting? Looking at the newly married AG who entered the painting mode, Yujiro was a little speechless, but a little worried. Ahem, thank you all readers for your monthly tickets. I am very grateful and say that today is the last day of March. I sincerely apologize to all readers. After all, in February and March, I didn't update well and was struggling to write. Thank you for your support. So, I am very sorry and thank you all readers. Also, don't ask Beidou about the twin ponytails. If you are curious, please don't blame me. The attribute awakened cat kindly induced you to say meow. Thank you all for your support, that's all. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 163. After the new issue of Shonen Jump was released, Ando Allen, as a comic fan, naturally bought it as soon as possible. In addition to Ushio and Tora, Ando Allen has already read the entire magazine. Oh, forget it, even if the style is a bit scum, it is the work of Hao Win after all, and it is not bad to kill time. Ando Allen sighed, picked up the magazine on the table, and flipped through it with some boredom. Like Li Suezong, after reading the first episode of Ushio and Tora, Ando Allen had planned to give up this comic. Even if the original author of the comic is Hao Winkuma, even if he has always supported Hao Winkuma, but for this style of painting, Ando Allen really can't love it. The reason why he started to read the comic Ushio and Tora is not because Ando Allen is arrogant, but because he is really free now. Because of the power outage, the computer and TV at home were completely unusable. Ando Lan, who was a bit introverted, had no other hobbies, and had already finished watching the new issue of Shonen Jump. Although this stock also appeared in Inuyasha, it is also interesting to appear in Ushio Tutora. Looking at the comics, Ahu attacked the samurai on horseback with a sword on TV and smashed the TV. Ando Lan smiled, and at the same time sighed with some regret, but this style is really. In Ushio Tutora, monsters are not visible to everyone. Because of the threat of the beast spear, and because he wanted to eat Xiao Qiao, Ahu was naturally inseparable from Xiao Qiao. After hiding his body, he came to school with Xiao Qiao. When Xiao Qiao came to school, the baseball that was hit almost hit him, and Ahu, who was hiding his body, directly blew up the baseball without hesitation. But Zyokyo's classmates couldn't see Ahu, and they were just confused about the sudden explosion of the baseball. You will make me feel very troubled. In order to prevent Ahu's attack, Xiao Qiao wrapped up the beast spear and brought it to school together. Xiao Chao was naturally dissatisfied with Ahu's excessive behavior and complained. "Hey, you guy called Chao, don't get it wrong, the reason why I possessed you is to eat you." Ahu stood on Xiao Chao's shoulder and told Xiao Chao his thoughts without hesitation. "Now the beast's spear is in your hand, so I can only endure it. If you have the courage to let the beast's spear leave you a certain distance, I will definitely tear you apart, and then, eat you until there is nothing left." In the comics, Xiao Chao gave his answer to Ahu's obsession with the beast's spear. Ando Lan kept shaking his head when he saw this. This monster called Ahu is really interesting. Knowing that the beast's spear he feared the most was in Xiao Chao's hand, he didn't know how to conceal his thoughts. It would be strange if he didn't get beaten by Xiao Chao. Continuing to read the comics, Ando Lan gradually began to ignore the problem of painting style. Because other people couldn't see Ahu, who took the initiative to hide his body, they only saw Xiao Chao holding the wrapped beast spear, constantly hitting and roaring at the air. After that, in order to cover up this embarrassment, Xiao Chao naturally pretended to be stupid. As the protagonist, Can Yu Chao is not like the protagonists in other popular comics who can do everything. Can Yu Chao, who has no talent for painting, rejected all invitations from clubs and stubbornly joined the art club to draw his lousy paintings. Although the comics only give Xiao Chao's 2 masterpieces, Ando Lan couldn't help laughing when he saw the paintings that were not even as good as those of elementary school students. In the comics, Xiao Chao was ridiculed by his classmates because of his paintings, and was teased by his childhood sweetheart Ma Zi. This series of things made the character of Xiao Chao look more real. Seeing Xiao Chao's furious look, Ando Lan felt the same way. As a comic fan, Ando Lan had the ideal of becoming a cartoonist after reading a lot of comics. But like Ushio Atsuki, Ando Lan, who has no talent for painting, looked at the character he had drawn on the table and remembered the teasing of his best friend before. At this moment, he suddenly felt a sense of sympathy. Childhood sweethearts have a good chance of becoming regular employees. This is a common plot in many comics, and Ushio and Tiger is no exception. Although Xiao Chao and Asako kept bickering, they did not have any resentment. And when Ahu told Xiao Chao about his feelings for Asako, he was beaten up by the arrogant Xiao Chao with a beast spear again. Seeing this, Ando Lan laughed. His thoughts were exposed, so he would naturally complain and vent. So when he saw Xiao Chao beating Ahu with a beast spear, Ando Lan felt that the relationship between Xiao Chao and Ahu was like the relationship between himself and his best friend. It should be like this between arrogant good friends. In many comics, once the existence of an old school building appears, extraordinary events will naturally happen. In the mystery comics, the old school building is a high-incidence place for murders, and in the monster comics, once the old school building appears, there will definitely be monsters inside. So when Ando Lan saw the old school building appear in the comics, he naturally guessed what would happen next. A monster appeared in the old school building, and then Xiao Chao and Ahu teamed up to kill the monster. Although Ando Lan did not complain about the style of painting this time, he was naturally dissatisfied with such a plot as he had read many comics. Feng Guangai Yuan is really something, this kind of plot has become stale. The subsequent development of the comics was exactly what Ando Lan thought. The people in charge of moving the items in the old school building were shocked when they saw a lifelike stone statue of a samurai. Although everyone later realized that this was just a more realistic stone statue, Ando Lan, as a reader, had already guessed that the next monster to appear might be the samurai stone statue. After all, the comics specifically gave a close-up of the samurai stone statue, and the existence of eyeballs in the eyes of the stone statue. Oh my god, when Ando Lan turned to the next page of the comics, he was shocked. Because this was a close-up of the eyes of the samurai stone statue, the existence of eyeballs was so dense that Ando Ian's scalp was numb. Because it appeared too suddenly, Ando Lan, who was not mentally prepared, was naturally scared. Knowing that the stone statue samurai had woken up and was ready to attack the students in the old school building, the next page of the comics turned the camera to Xiao Chao, who was in class. What made Ando Lan complain was that as a monster, Ahu actually listened to the history class seriously, and was more serious than Xiao Chao, who was a human. But then, because the beast spear sensed the appearance of the monster, he took Xiao Chao to the old school building. When Xiao Chao entered the door of the old school building, he saw a classmate being petrified, and his lower body had turned into stone. Anxious, Xiao Chao began to look around, but did not find any classmates. The teacher who heard the news chose to call the police for such a supernatural event. Seeing that the police regarded the disappearance of Asako and others as a kidnapping incident and the old school building was sealed, Ando Lan was a little anxious. It was obviously a monster, but these people who knew nothing were making a fuss. The development of the comics next surprised Ando Lan. He thought Ahu would help Xiao Chao find the warrior stone statue monster, but he didn't expect that the two would get into an internal fight. Xiao Chao, who was eager to save people, saw that Ahu was unwilling to help him, picked up the beast spear, transformed into a long-haired appearance, and beat Ahu with the powerful beast spear. Finally, under the threat of the beast spear, Ahu revealed the information of the monster to Xiao Chao. Stone-eating monsters usually live in ancient books or ancient props. They will drag humans into their own enchantment, and then turn humans into stone and eat them in the enchantment. However, the stone-eating monster also has a bad taste. When turning humans into stone, it is not petrified directly, but is done little by little, because it enjoys the fear of humans slowly turning into stone. So it's in the enchantment. Ando Lan showed a trace of realization on his face. Looking at Ahu's explanation, Ando Lan finally understood why Xiao Chao did not find monsters or classmates when he entered the old school building before. According to the setting in Nura, Ghost, this should be the fear of the stone-eating monster, right? Although the two comics are related, there seems to be no big difference between the monsters. Under Ahu's suggestion, Xiao Chao used the beast spear to split the enchantment of the stone-eating monster, but it was a step too late. Xiao Chao's classmates had all turned into stone, even the childhood sweetheart Ma Ziyi who had quarreled with Xiao Chao before. Xiao Chao, holding the beast spear, had a huge increase in combat power after the transformation. After seeing the warrior statue, he directly used a spear to open a big hole in the opponent's heart. Xiao Chao thought it was over, but he made a fatal mistake. The body of the stone-eating monster was not the warrior statue. Although Ahu gave a hint, it was too late. The stone-eating monster suddenly launched an attack from the eyes of the warrior statue and hit Xiaocao's throat directly. Xiao Chao, who was severely injured, lost his beast spear and turned back into a mortal. Although Xiao Chao wanted to reach out and pick up the beast spear, he was stopped by the stone-eating monster and was severely injured again. Facing the existence of the stone-eating monster, even adults may not be able to defeat it, not to mention that after losing the beast spear, Xiao Chao is just an ordinary junior high school student. Although he complained that Xiao Chao was not as powerful as the protagonist in the general comics, Ando Lan couldn't help but worry. Ahu, please. The wounded Xiao Chao spoke to Ahu who was just standing by. It was not the scene of asking for help as Ando Lan imagined. Xiao Chao just hoped that Ahu would lead the petrified classmates out of the stone-eating monster's barrier. I really didn't expect that kid to beg me, it feels so good. In the comics, although Ahu said this, he still helped Xiao Chao and rescued those petrified classmates. When Ando Lan saw this, a smile appeared on his face. Ahu is considered tsundere, right? Next, just as Ando Lan thought, Ahu entered the tsundere mode. You are my food, Ahu said this while helping Xiao Chao fight against the stone-eating monster. With the help of the tsundere Ahu, Xiao Chao killed the stone-eating monster with the powerful power of the beast spear. Whether it was the Battle of Ahu, the Battle of Xiaocao's transformation after getting the beast spear, or the fight in the end when the stone-eating monster appeared. The handling of the battle storyboards made Endo-lan breathe fast, and even forgot that he was still complaining about the style of this comic before. Although I still want to complain about this style, but after reading this episode of Ushio and Tiger, Ando-Ian's face showed an expectant expression. Once you accept this style, this comic is still quite interesting. Tsundere Ahu and Tsundere Xiao Chao, what will be the next episode? Xiao Chao to Ahu, and then to Ando-lan, cough cough, so Tsundere is contagious. Today I have been listening to my brother's songs and rewatching Ashes of Time. I am sorry for the late update. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Email. Chapter 164. P.S. If you want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions, search for the WeChat public account Dread and follow it now to give more support to a certain Chuyuni comic artist. So, the reason why the ranking of the comics has risen is because the technique I previously hidden in the comics has been activated. Regarding the rise in the ranking of Ushio and Tora, Takahashi Makoto's explanation made Yoshida's mouth twitch wildly, and he kept rolling his eyes. Anyone who reads the comics will become a devout believer and fanatical believer of my Hohoinkuma because of the effect of hypnotic suggestion. My Hohoinkuma will surely stand at the top of the world. Although the style of the comics is very rough, once you accept this style, the compact plot is still great. Yoshida picked up the comic manuscript on the table, with a look of regret as if he had seen through the truth. I think this is the reason why the manga ranking has risen. Humph. The views of ordinary people are really superficial. Takahashi Makoto glanced at Jinghe River, who was drawing the manga with his head down, and showed an unfathomable expression on his face. After the new episode is published, perhaps people with insight will understand the greatness of my Hourinkuma. Perhaps just as Yoshida said, as Uo and Tora is gradually serialized, readers have gradually accepted the style of Uo and Tora, so the ranking of the manga has gradually begun to rise. But the real reason for the rise in the ranking of the manga is because of the simultaneous serialization of the yokai era manga. The same type of manga is published at the same time, which is easy to be compared. If the authors of the manga are different cartoonists, there may be a healthy competition of gay love due to the same subject matter, or a vicious competition of all kinds of mouth cannons and face-slapping dog blood. However, as the three manga of yokai era, the original author is Hourinkuma. Although the three manga will also be compared, it is a disguised promotion of the manga itself. Although Inuyasha is mainly a monster adventure comic, it is very popular among women because it contains many love affairs. Especially after Shimaru rescued Rin, this comic once ranked first. Although Shimaru is not the protagonist, his cold personality and handsome face make him very popular in the whole comic. But this is also Shimaru's shortcoming. A character who can only act cool and handsome, even if he has a strong aura at the beginning and occupies a lot of popularity, but as the comic gradually develops and the number of appearances increases, readers will gradually lose interest. After all, facing a character who is like an iceberg and indifferent to everything, readers will gradually lose the sense of reality over time. The stereotype description will be seen too much, and the previous touch will be lost. When Rin appeared in the comic, she was a little orphan of the human race. Her parents and brother were killed by robbers, and her heart was strongly stimulated. Therefore, she could not speak when she first appeared. With her weak body, Ling kept looking for food to rescue Shimaru, who was beaten all over by Inuyasha's wind wound and could not move. When asked by Shimaru about the scars on her body, Ling, who was cared for the first time but could not speak, answered with an innocent smile, which gradually made Shimaru care. Facing such an innocent little loli, even Shimaru, who had always ignored everything, gradually melted his cold and lonely heart. Although it was to test Tensuya's ability, Shimaru saved Ling, who was bitten to death by wolves, but in the eyes of readers, this Shimaru, who always appeared in the image of an iceberg, saved a human for the first time. Just like the plots that often appear in many comic novels, a character who has always been cold suddenly does something warm. The prejudices and misunderstandings built on this character will instantly fade a lot, and the character setting will also become more real. So when Ling appeared, the character of Shimaru gradually became vivid. Shimaru, who seems to be indifferent to everything, is interested in a little human loli. Although there is no word in the comics, every reader can feel the weight of Ling in Shimaru's heart. Of course, many female readers are dissatisfied with Shimaru's gradual entry into the rhythm of loli control, but facing the innocent Ling, after understanding Ling's life experience, they don't complain too much. Although there is no fierce battle in the whole episode, the interaction between the new character Ling and Shimaru is enough. Here, Inuyasha won the first place when launching new characters, and Nura also entered a new chapter, that is, the Shikoku 88 Demon Night Parade. Readers thought that after the Ushiki Rebellion, with the appearance of Onmyoji's sister Hanako Nura, this comic will turn to daily comics, but they didn't expect that all this was just a cover. As the local snake of Edo, the Nura group was spied on by the Shikoku 88 Demon Night Parade. Starting with the assassination of the Nura group's Cotter Baboon, the battle between the Nura group and the Shikoku 88 Demon Knight begins. Hidden God Gilbu Yuzhang is the 8th son of the 88th wife of Hidden God Gilbu Tanuki, the leader of the Shikoku 88 Demon Knight Parade, and the monster who inherited the purest power of his father. Because his name comes from the Peeping Jade Throne, and Yuzhang inherited all of his father's power since birth, Yuzhang wants to surpass his father, collect more fear, and live above the 100 demons, becoming the Lord of Demons. Just like Inuyasha, which is very popular among female readers, Slicker also has an extraordinary response in the hearts of male readers. Becoming the master of demons and monsters, becoming the general of the leader of hundreds of ghosts, this ideal and this heroic spirit alone make many male readers excited. Especially after experiencing the Ushiki Rebellion, Rikuo gradually accepted his monster bloodline. Facing the challenge from Yuzhang, he naturally led his men to fight back. Although the serialization of the comic has only just begun for the battle between the two sides, many readers are already looking forward to the duel between the two sides. A man's romance, in addition to mechas, really also has exciting battles. Leading his loyal subordinates to fight with the enemy on the battlefield, don't talk about Chuyunibu, which man has never had such a fantasy in his heart. The painting style is different, the fighting style is different, the fighting scenes are different. The comic Tide and Tiger, which also uses monsters as the main body, is much weaker in terms of momentum than Slicker. Although the Tide and the Tiger has been serialized for the shortest time, the image of the protagonist Kang Yuchao has gained praise from readers based solely on the content of the current series. Therefore, as this comic was serialized, its ranking gradually began to rise. In the comics, Sogitsushio is not portrayed as a perfect hero, nor does he have the strength of the half-demon Inuyasha and Rikuo. He is just like the boy next door, a kind and brave spirit, but still at the same age. Real people with human characteristics. Before Xiao Chao got the beast spear, he was just an ordinary boy with slightly stronger athletic ability. The latest serialized content of Ushio and Tora is titled The Ghost Living in the Painting. In 3 chapters, it briefly tells the story of Ushio and his classmate Raiko Hanyu. And it is precisely because of the content of this chapter that many readers are attracted by the story told in the comic and selectively forget about the rough painting style of the comic. The famous painter Hanyu was hit hard when his wife abandoned him and her daughter and eloped with her student. He finally died with hatred. Because of his strong resentment, he turned into a ghost and stayed by his daughter Raiko Hanyu's side. Full of hostility towards anyone who wants to get close to his daughter. As a devilish daughter controller, Hanyu Painter, although his name is to protect his daughter, such behavior also plunges his daughter into despair. If it were a normal manga, many male protagonists would conquer Hanyu by helping Raiko resolve her confusion. However, in Ushio and Tora, there is no such plot. Xiaoxiu just wants to help Hanyu. Perhaps someone who helps others without asking for any reason would be described as a bad person, but Xiao Chao is not such a person. Because he didn't want to see the people around him fall into the abyss of loneliness, Xiaoxiu naturally decided to help Hanyu escape from such a predicament. Although the painting style of Tide and Tiger has been criticized by readers, the storyboard depiction of the battle is very brilliant. As a monster comic, the battles shown in this comic are more acceptable to readers. After all, the realistic style of punching to the flesh looks more real. Ando Aoi has become a loyal reader of Ushi and Tora. In the past, after the new Shonen Jump was released, he naturally chose to skip Ud and Tora, but now he has to read this comic first and has to. It can be said that the speed at which human impressions change is truly unscrupulous to the extreme. In the manga, Oshio senses Hanyu's weakness, which is Raiko's portrait, and does not hesitate to use the beast spear to deliver the final blow. However, in the manga, Raiko blocks the portrait with her body, and the beast spear directly passes through. He took Raiko's body. As a result, Hanyu Raiko was not harmed at all, but she was seriously injured by the painter Hanyu, who turned into a demon out of resentment. This episode of The Tide and the Tiger is the final chapter of the ghost that lives in the painting. Although it is not the first time to watch it, Ando AI is still attracted by the intense fighting storyboard. Read it in one sitting. Putting down the comics in his hands and looking at the calendar with the wreath on the wall, Ami Ando showed a tangled look on his face. There are still 3 days until the new issue of Shonen Jump is released. It's really hard. There are many readers who are looking forward to Tide and Tora just like Ando Aoi, but among them, the first reader to see it is naturally Yoshida, who is the editor. Although he has to collect manga manuscripts for 3 different comics every week, Yoshida, who is outstanding in ability, has done a good job in preparing in advance. Every time he comes to collect manga manuscripts, he reads them at Makoto Takahashi's house and gives some suggestions of my own. In this chapter of Inuyasha, although Sesshomaru and Suzu do not appear again, they are still looking for the Four Souls Jade. In addition, the new character Wolf Demon Gunga appears as Inuyasha's love rival. Perhaps the ranking of this chapter will be a little change. In Slippery Ghost, the wind monster whip that killed the monster baboon of the Nura clan actually chose to attack the first general of the Nura clan. Is this a formal fight between the two sides? Then the next development is that the two groups are monsters fighting each other? Well, this is a good development. Maybe the ranking will rise due to the fierce battle. Hey, Chen, you can't draw like this. Before he finished reading the Tide and Tiger comic manuscript of this chapter, Yoshida put down the comic and looked at Makoto Takahashi with a crazy look on his face. Although it's just a comic, this kind of split shots is a bit. My cat, there is no point in saying more. Takahashi Makoto naturally knew what Yoshida was worth, and a strange smile appeared on his face. Won't there be many humans complaining about the rough style of painting before? Humph, let me, how Nkuma, make them understand a truth through the content of this episode. What truth? Although he knew that the answer would be very strange, Yoshida still asked subconsciously. Complaining about the rough style of comics is because my believers are not devout enough in their faith in Lord Nkuma. My novel A Certain Secondary Cartoonist will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform, and there will also be a 100% lucky draw gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign in the upper right corner to add friends, search for the public account Dread and follow it. Hurry up. After that, the progress of this comic book may be accelerated, that is, it will enter the stage of time-lapse and jump. This is because a certain cat has to speed up while lamenting that many of the anime on a certain website have not been finished %U003E /U003C%. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Email. Chapter 165. P.S. I want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions. Now search the WeChat public account Dread and follow it to give more support to a certain secondary cartoonist. If asked about his current favorite comic, Wang Jiao would definitely choose Slippery Ghost. Wang Jiao initially stayed away from comics involving monsters. Although as a male reader, Wang Jiao really doesn't like comics like Monsters and Monsters. Wang Jiao has always been concerned about these supernatural beings. Just like Jintoki and Shishida in Gintama, Wang Jiao is also very afraid of ghosts, monsters, and other existences. In short, Wang Jiao is afraid of ghosts. In fact, there is nothing shameful about this kind of thing. Human beings should have a fear and awe of unknown things, so that they can be called human beings. The reason why I like the comic Slippery Ghost is because this comic tells the story of the heroic spirit among monsters, which gradually increases Wang Jiao's resistance to supernatural monsters. Especially in the Niugui chapter, the past mentioned in the comic, that is, the story of how Hualao, the general of the Nulayan group, recovered the Niugui, made Wang Jiao fascinated. When watching the scene in the comic where the monsters were having fun and drinking from a large bowl, Wang Jiao was completely drunk by the passion. The fear of monsters in my heart has gradually faded a lot. It turns out that monsters are not as scary as I imagined. Subsequently, the new serial Chow and Tiger was published. Especially after Ahu's appearance, scenes of tsundere and cuteness continued to appear. Seeing Xiao Chao and Ahu fighting side by side, Wang Jiao was extremely envious. Now Wang Jiao is no longer very afraid of monsters, but rather yearns for them. Because in the comics, Xiao Chao and Ahu are full of hostility towards each other, but at the critical moment, one person and one demon will still put aside their prejudices and fight together. For such a monster companion, Wang Jiao was envious in his heart. Although he knew that it could not exist in reality, it was always okay to fantasize about it, right? Although this style of painting looks a bit rough, the story is still very exciting. I haven't read the newly purchased Young Jump yet, but there is no doubt that the comic Wang Jiao complained about is the Tide and the Tiger on the cover of this issue. Because of the cover, Wang Jiao did not read Slippery Ghost first as usual, but chose the Tide and the Tiger. Although I like Slippery Ghost very much, the protagonist Rikuo in the comic still has monster blood in his body, so he should be classified as a half-demon. So in terms of protagonists, Wang Jiao prefers Kanyu Esheo, an ordinary human being. In the first few chapters of Tide and Tiger, there were not many powerful monsters on the scene, including the stone-eating monster and the obsessive ghost. These two monsters did not look very scary, especially the stone-eating monster because of the close-up of its eyes. Not to mention Wang Jiao, a man who is somewhat afraid of monsters, many readers were shocked. At the beginning of this chapter Chao and Tiger, what appeared was not Xiao Chao and Ahu, but a group of workers building roads. In the cartoon, a group of workers lifted a five-pointed star-shaped important stone despite the dissuasion of an old man. There are 5 wooden boxes under the 5 corners of this stone. Although in the comics, the workers think that this is a landmark in ancient times, Wang Jiao, as a reader, knows that there is definitely something terrifying sealed underneath. Monster. These guys are really idiots. This weird-looking stone must be some kind of seal. Wang Jiao couldn't help but cursed as he watched the stone being gradually lifted up in the comic. Although he was a little scared, thinking about the monster comics he read during this period, there were no too scary monsters. Wang Jiao was vaguely looking forward to it. I wonder what monsters will appear later. The comic is divided into 3 panels, with the same wooden box drawn, and an incomplete human face appears in the comic. Looking at this almost human-like monster, Wang Jiao, who had always been nervous, breathed a sigh of relief. Compared with strange-looking monsters, this kind of almost human-like monster is not very scary. But when Wang Jiao turned to the next page of the comic, he was immediately shocked. In the comic, at the beginning, an unknown monster flew out of one of the wooden boxes, and then the screen turned to reveal a huge human head suspended in the air with its eyes closed, and blood flowing from its mouth. As for the three workers who were still observing the wooden box before, only half of the body below the waist is left in the cartoon. Judging from the cartoon, it should be the huge human head that bit the three workers' bodies into two in one bite. Cut. There had never been such a brutal scene in Tide and Tiger before, but now in the comics, such a bloody and violent scene suddenly appeared, which shocked Wang Jiao and almost threw young Junk out. But the comic doesn't end here. Four huge heads floated up from the other four wooden boxes at the same time, and then flew away. Half of one worker's head and half of his body were missing, and half of another worker's head was missing. The face disappeared, along with his hands. But what was weird was that the fingertips were still there, but the part below the fingertips was indeed missing. Although these two pictures did not have any narration or dialogue, this feeling really made Wang Jiao feel his heart twitch. The expressions on the faces of the two workers were dull and completely unbelievable, as if they were telling every reader, including Wang Jiao, that they still didn't understand what was happening. Okay, I can still accept this kind of painting style. After several months of training in monster comics, Wang Jiao has gradually become more courageous. Apart from being surprised at the beginning by such a picture, apart from that, I can barely accept it now. But what shocked Wang Jiao the most was the difference between monsters. The three mangas are all about monsters. Apart from die-hard fans of the Phoenix Academy, readers who choose to watch them will also watch them more or less. Readers like Wang Jiao like Slicker the most, but they are also following the Tide and the Tiger. Because of the preconceived notions of Slicker, there are not many monsters that harm humans in Slicker. Except for the tragic side characters from the beginning, there are the monsters of the four countries that appear now. In the comic Tide and Tiger, because of Ahu's cuteness and arrogance, coupled with his preconceived understanding of the monsters in Slippery Ghost, Wang Jiao gradually ignored the ferocious nature of the monsters, and the contents of the previous serialized chapters. Under Ziokeo's supervision, Ahu did not commit any harm to human beings, so this comic was gradually classified by Wang Jiao as a harmless type of comic. After all, the previous serialized content, even for himself, who has always been afraid of monsters, people don't feel the terror of monsters. But in the chapter just serialized, Wang Jiao directly saw the ferocious side of the monster. I want it so much, I want it so much. 5 huge heads were suspended in the air, their mouths dripping with blood because of the recognition of the food, making the mouth full of blood. The woman we want to seal us under the stone, Hizaki Makaku's head. Looking at the few words spoken by these 5 huge heads, Wang Jiao was not only horrified, but also more confused. From the information revealed in the manga, it can be seen that this monster was previously sealed by a woman named Hizaki Makaku. But Wang Jiao remembers it very clearly. It was mentioned in the previous comics that this monster has been sealed for some years. If calculated according to time, this woman may have died long ago. Looking at the ferocious smiles of the 5 heads in the comic, Wang Jiao swallowed hard. Although the comic looked a bit rough, he could still feel the feeling of fear in it. But there should be no monsters. After all, if Xiao Chao and Ahu join forces, it shouldn't be very difficult to eliminate such monsters, right? After slowly calming down, the curiosity and suspicion in Wang Jiao's heart suppressed his fear of monsters, and he continued to read the comics. In the comics, it also turns to Xiao Chao and Ahu. Xiao Chao saw the news about the tragic death of workers on TV, so he suspected that it was Ahu who did it. Without asking carefully, he launched the beast transformation with a beast spear and launched a fierce attack on Ahu. Jiao's character will never explain when she is framed, so she starts a confrontation with Xiao Chao. Needless to say, the result was that Ahu was worried about the beast spear in Ziokeo's hand, so he ran away after a brief fight, and while escaping, he made a declaration that he was going to eat people. Wang Jiao was stunned at this development. Through the content of the previous comic series, the relationship between Ushio and Tora has been clarified. According to current opinions, they should be good friends who cherish each other, but what is going on now? Let alone Ahu's sudden escape, the performance of the protagonist Xiao Chao made Wang Jiao a little dissatisfied. Xiao Chao took action just because of a little suspicion. Although his personality was somewhat straightforward, his IQ. Perhaps in order to alleviate the terrifying scene before, in the subsequent comics, neither Xiao Chao nor Ahu appeared, but the scene was switched to Zyukeo's childhood friend Mayuko. Although the girl Mayuko is not the kind of charming character in other comics, she is the most beautiful female character in this rough-styled comic among the characters currently on the stage. Wang Jiao was a little confused as to why the comic suddenly switched to Mayuko going shopping, but as the comic unfolded, this doubt was gradually solved. In the process of searching for Ahu, Xiao Chao met the old man who had previously discouraged the workers. Through the grandfather's description, as a reader, Wang Jiao, like Xiao Chao, knew that the names of the 5 huge-headed monsters that had carried out brutal killings before they appeared were called Hungry Mian, and the reason why Mayuko was mentioned before was because Hungry had been sealed before. Hizaki Makaku, who sleeps with monsters, looks exactly like Mayuko. The next cartoon made Wang Jiao unable to stop laughing. Unlike the monsters lurking around humans in Slippery Ghost, Ahu, a monster that has been sealed for 500 years, cannot adapt to urbanized cities at all. Because it was mentioned in the comics before that monsters like Ahu can hide their evil spirit from humans, so they made a lot of jokes. Ahu's claws were stuck with chewing gum. Ahu, who had no common sense, squatted in the middle of the road and was hit by a passing car. Ahu regarded the car as a monster and unleashed the power of thunder and lightning in the middle of the road wantonly. Because of knowledge depending on the degree, the series of jokes made by Ahu made Wang Jiao gradually forget the horror when Hung Mian appeared on the scene. Then the comic turned to the grandfather and Xiao Chao again. This comic tells the story of the past when Emin was sealed, and there are also some bloody scenes. In the middle of the narration, there are also plots of Emin killing passers-by on the street when he was looking for Hizaki Makaku. Wang Jiao, who was laughing happily just now, was horrified by the shameless behavior of Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma. Especially at the end of this episode, after learning that Emin's target might be Mayuko, Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma drew the future of Zyukeo's imagination crazily. Mayuko was swallowed by one of the huge heads of Emin, leaving only the part above the neck, hanging upside down outside. Because it was the last page of the comic draft, Takahashi Makoto deliberately drew it very carefully, and the effect was of course very good. At least many readers, like Wang Jiao, were shocked when they turned to this page without any preparation, and threw the comics to the ground. Actually, this is not shameful. When Yoshida saw this page of comics before, he was also shocked without exception. My novel A Certain Secondary Cartoonist will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform, and there will also be a 100% lucky draw gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign add friends in the upper right corner, search for the public account Dread and follow it. Hurry up. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Email. Chapter 166. P.S. I want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions. Now search the WeChat public account Dread and follow it to give more support to A Certain Secondary Cartoonist. The episode where Hung Mian appeared really frightened many readers, but this was just the beginning. Not to mention the readers, even Yoshida couldn't accept the content serialized after Tide and Tiger. Cheng, tell me honestly, did you already take this into consideration when you were drawing the Tide and the Tiger? Yoshida put the comic manuscript on the table and looked at Makoto Takahashi suspiciously. Especially when you chose such a rough painting style, did you consider the bloody and violent elements when you first started painting? Bang, Makoto Takahashi didn't reply. He just paused for a moment with the brush in his hand, and then continued to dance on the drawing. What are you talking about? Give me a good answer. Yoshida was angry and slapped the table hard. Do you know how many parents have called the editorial department to complain during this period? I think this will continue. The Teachers and Parents Association will put pressure on Yorangsha to stop serializing this comic. My beloved is the cat. The so-called monsters are such vicious existences. Makoto Takahashi reluctantly put down his brush and turned aside Shizuka, who was painting seriously, with a meaningful smile on his face. Monsters are inherently evil. And no matter how ferocious monsters are, they will eventually be replaced by humans. Besides, in this world now, compared to existences called monsters, humans are the most evil creatures. The issue we are discussing now is comics. Please don't put the Chuyuni philosophy you are good at into it, Yoshida complained smoothly, and at the same time, he also looked at Shizuka, who was drawing on the side. An assistant named Jinghe, he draws comics meticulously, but what on earth is this guy Cheng thinking? This is not the first time. At the beginning, Yoshida didn't care very much, but during the recent serialization, due to the violent and bloody scenes that appeared in Tide and Tiger, Yoshida discussed this issue with Makoto Takahashi many times, but every time when it comes to this aspect, before Takahashi Makoto explains, he will subconsciously take a look at Shizuka. Maybe we should talk to Jinghe River, maybe this introverted assistant knows something. The thoughtful Yoshida stared at Jinghe River, lost in thought. While Yoshida was thinking, the doorbell of Makoto Takahashi's house rang. Ding-chun strolled to the door, sniffed hard, and instead of opening the door directly as usual, he started barking. The meaning it wants to convey is very simple, that is, Ding-chun does not recognize the person ringing the doorbell outside. Humph. It seems that stupid humans are trying to break into the barrier again. Makoto Takahashi snorted coldly, pulled up his white coat, picked up the wooden sword beside him, and walked to the door with a gloomy face. Said in a low voice, humans who try to break into the barrier, report your name. Ah Cheng. Yoshida had a black line on his face and covered his forehead with his hands very weakly. Regarding Makoto Takahashi's behavior, he simply chose to ignore it. When he opened the door, he saw a strange man and two women. Yoshida looked at Makoto Takahashi with some doubts on his face. Yoshida, as the editor-in-chief, is very familiar with Takahashi Makoto's circle of friends who are Chuyunibu patients. Yoshida can be sure that Takahashi Makoto definitely does not know these three people in front of him. Excuse me. The one who spoke was the young woman standing on Yoshida's left. But halfway through her words, the woman froze and pointed at Makoto Takahashi with a look of surprise on her face. Ah! The fierceness of the Phoenix Academy, it's you. Huh? This aura is. Makoto Takahashi frowned, pondering hard, and looked at Yoshida with a puzzled face. My family cat, you still remember, when I led your family to conquer the world? When? What are you talking about? Sensing the strange looks in the eyes of the three people opposite him, Yoshida unceremoniously launched a tile attack on Makoto Takahashi's head. Ignoring Takahashi Cheng's constant complaints while holding his head, he looked at the three people in front of him with confusion, and said with an embarrassed smile, I'm sorry, but ignore Cheng, a Chuyunibu patient. Are you? Mom and Dad, this person is the person who saved me in the bank before. Later, when I watched TV, I found out that his name is Phoenix Institute Kuma, and he is also a cartoonist. The woman who spoke before pointed at Makoto Takahashi excitedly. There was still some shyness unique to a girl on her face. Ah! I'm sorry, my name is Shiratori Renmei. Bank. Makoto Takahashi subconsciously stroked the blindfold on his face and looked at the excited woman in front of him doubtfully. Oh, it turns out it's you. But unfortunately, I'm not interested in ordinary humans, and, She doesn't seem to have the potential to become a magical girl. What happened after that surprised Yoshida. It turns out that the Shiratori family is looking for a Jumumenha. No, to be precise, they should be looking for their youngest son Shun Shiratori, who has run away from home. Shun Shiratori likes to draw, but was opposed by his mother, who despised the work of a cartoonist, so he ran away from home. It is said that he is now working as an assistant to the cartoonist Ajumumenha. I didn't expect to be able to find you, Mr. Takahashi Makoto. But it's all because of me that your eyes. Shiratori Renmei showed a guilty look on her face, tears kept flowing down, but between her eyebrows, the hint of shyness in the room made everyone present look weird. This Shiratori beauty is the female employee that Makoto Takahashi saved during the bank robbery incident. Although I am very grateful for Makoto Takahashi's life-saving grace, at that time Takahashi Makoto was sent to the hospital because he was injured and in a coma, and the two have never seen each other again. Afterwards, Shiratori Renmei kept asking for news about her savior. Although she knew from TV that the person who saved her at that time was a cartoonist named Phoenix Academy, but how could she find him in such a huge crowd? This kind of thing where a hero saves a beauty and commits himself to each other, although it is very cliched and cliché, but judging from the results, even if the performer is a Chuyunibu like Takahashi Makoto, the effect will still be outstanding. Looking at Shiratori Renmei's beautiful expression, Yoshida showed a hint of a good show on his face. You know, not many people know about the marriage of Makoto Takahashi and Rina Ogata. After all, no one would have thought that a person who is still in college would have already entered the grave called marriage, right? But when he heard that Makoto Takahashi was a manga artist, the flash of disdain in Shiratori Hitomi's mother's eyes made Yoshida a little unhappy. Although the other party had not told the reason why Shun Shiratori ran away from home before, looking at the look on that woman's face, combined with the fact that Shun Shiratori was drawing comics at a Jumumenha, Yoshida had already guessed it. Do you think this is a fateful encounter? Under Yoshida's strange eyes, a faint smile appeared on Takahashi Makoto's face. Huh. It's so sweet. The Phoenix Academy, are fierce, but I have already signed a contract with the witch. The contract has been signed. The only one who can accompany the Lord of the Phoenix Academy to return to chaos is the witch Rina. This is destiny. This is Steins Gate's choice. Ha 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 ha. Even though Takahashi Makoto, a Chuyunibu, spoke in a way that was different from ordinary people, Shiratori Renmei still heard what Takahashi Makoto wanted to express. His face instantly became a little disappointed, and his eyes that were crying just now were now. There was a flash of strange light. On Yachin Mumenji's side, Landai was watching Shiratori Shun drafting with a simple sketch, when the violent sound of the underground door suddenly rang. Hey, Chen, Mr. Yoshida, and... After watching Makoto Takahashi leading the Shiratori family into the room, the manga studio of Ajumumenha fell completely into a mysterious silence. The humans who invaded the barrier before seemed to realize their own shortcomings and wanted to get a copy of Phoenix Academy's fierce truth. Unfortunately, both in terms of level and equipment, they were still far behind, Makoto Takahashi said with a triumphant smile on his face. So, I kindly took them to clear the Yachin Mumenji dungeon. Now that the dungeon has been opened, both sides are ready to fight. Takahashi Makoto ignored what happened next. Under Yoshida's surprised eyes, he returned to his home and began to continue drawing comics. As for the quarrel coming from next door, Yoshida originally wanted to notify Ajumumenha's editor, Kazuhide Hattori, but when he realized that Ajumumenha was not his cartoonist, Yoshida put the cell phone he took out and put it back. In your pocket. My familiar cat, what are you planning? Normally Yoshida would leave after getting the manga manuscript, but today was a little unusual, and he had been waiting quietly at Makoto Takahashi's house. Seeing Yoshida raising his head and peeking at Jinghihi from time to time, Takahashi Makoto showed a hint of surprise on his face, and taunted disdainfully, it seems that the organization has ordered you to recruit Lyoza. But it's all useless, Lyoza, you won't betray our association easily, so you'd better save your energy. There was no refutation or any answer. In order to clarify his previous doubts, Yoshida used his patience skills and kept withstanding the attacks of Chuyuni's radio waves. It was finally time to finish work, and Yoshida was already exhausted physically and mentally. But in order to understand Takahashi Makoto's thoughts, all this effort is worth it. Jinghe-kun, can you come with me to the coffee shop to talk? I want to ask you something about Aiken and the Tide and the Tiger. Yoshida showed a kind smile on his face and stopped the man who was walking dully. Still River. As expected, Shizukawa has the talent to incorporate dissatisfaction with society and the world into comics, just as Eiji Niizuma commented. Looking at the manga manuscript completed by Shizuohi and comparing it with the search engine in his mind, Takahashi Makoto was amazed. When it comes to depicting bloody, violent, and cruel scenes, Shizuohi really has an excellent talent that even he can't match. Compared with the original work of The Tide and the Tiger, the cartoon drafts drawn now are much more enjoyable and shocking. However, if this state continues, Takahashi Makoto knows very well that the existence named Jinghe River will completely fall into the abyss of darkness. Being suppressed for a long time without being able to vent can make people fall into a state of madness. The reason why Shizuka was asked to draw the manga Tide and Tiger was because Makoto Takahashi had a trying mentality. Although he had no interest in affecting the fate of others. In addition to didactic textbooks, comics can also change a person's existence. So, don't underestimate comics. The novel A Second-Class Cartoonist will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform, and there will also be a 100% lucky draw gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign on the upper right to add a friend, search the official account Dread and follow it. Hurry up. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao-do SD Email. Chapter 167. P.S. I want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions. Now search the WeChat public account Dread and follow it to give more support to a certain secondary cartoonist. Makoto Takahashi, wearing a white coat, is wandering on the street. As a cartoonist who serialized 3 comics at the same time, Takahashi Makoto was very tight on time even if he transferred the comics through plagiarism. In normal times, Takahashi Makoto would be squatting at home drawing comics at this time, and there would be absolutely no free time to go out and browse the pedestrian street dungeons. However, things are different from the past. Now the most brutal battle in the world is going on at home, the battle between women. The 2 parties involved in the fight are Ueno Aoi, who is called an assistant and is actually the agent of the witch, and the other is Hitomi Shiratorai, who stopped by on the pretext of visiting her younger brother Shun Shiratorai. The 2 sides launched a brutal battle over the issue of Takahashi Makoto's ownership. As for Tintin's unscrupulous assistant, because he didn't forget to add fuel to the fire while watching the show, he was driven home by the furious Makoto Takahashi, who said he was on vacation to recuperate. Why are you driving me back in such a hurry? Cheng, you have sister Rina, and you still want to keep this sneaky kitten in captivity. Ueno Aoi, who was driven away, opened the absolute roar field, making the battle fierce. Ah la la la, who is Aiken's choice? Why are you so anxious? Do you think you also like Aiken? It's illegal to commit suicide. Shiratorai Renmi said that she also has the same in the absolute roaring field. I am bound to have a great battle with Ueno Aoi. I have signed a contract with Witch Rina. Before Takahashi Makoto finished speaking, he received a strong double combo of ridicule. Cheng, don't forget, you have already registered with Rina-chan. Ueno Aoi stared at Takahashi Makoto, with a unique expression of a person with dark and low abilities on her face, although her smile didn't look much like usual. There is a difference, but the words spoken are extremely cruel. If you are eating from the bowl and still thinking about the pot, then chop yourself into pieces and throw them into the pot to cook. If you feel that you can't do it alone, I will be happy to complete this delicious dish on Rina-chan's behalf. Don't say such horrible things with a smile. This is a threat from Hungwakyo. Can you call the police? You can get divorced even if you get married. According to Chang, all that is needed in this world is love and peace, don't you think so, Chang? Shiratori Renmei showed herself to Takahashi Makoto without hesitation. The charm, ahem, that's what, it's just to shake a certain part of the body deliberately and ferociously, to do something that women like Fang-chan and Rin-chan find it difficult to do in their entire lives? Hey, woman, if the previous statement was a threat, yours is definitely a curse. And he also launched such a shameless attack. Makoto Takahashi, who was trying to quell the war, was attacked by a brutal double attack as soon as he opened his mouth. Shut up, roared in unison, this move is called a joint attack of anger. What are these two guys fighting about? Looking at the two women who were fighting again, Makoto Takahashi sighed helplessly, walked out of the room, locked the door from the outside with the key, and showed a smile on his face with a darkened smile. Let's make a fuss, then show off your weapons and engage in a ferocious battle with explosive clothes. From the tragic fight, you will gradually understand the true meaning of love, so that the two shy lilies will be reunited between the barriers blooming. The Fierce Phoenix Academy, can only help you get here. In order to prevent himself from being hacked, to prevent himself from taking the path of brother Jia Cheng, and to implement the theme of love and peace, the arrogant cartoonist Feng Guanjin Jujhan waved his sleeves and floated away. Oh! Yang, this chapter of Chow and Tiger is awesome. I knew Xiao Chow would make that choice. Huh? That kind of comic with a completely ugly style is still exciting? Yang, are you being funny? Humph. What do you know, AMU? That's right, after all, you haven't read this comic properly. How many women can make a man not shed tears in his life? This line is so cool, isn't it? Kanyu Esheo is a real man. That line of dialogue just now, is it from The Tide and the Tiger? Indeed, it sounds pretty good. Of course, Shio and Tiger is the real romance for men. In this episode, Shio, in order to save. Listening to the two high school students passing by, they were discussing The Tide and Tiger that had just been published, but Makoto Takahashi did not show a happy look on his face. If other cartoonists were walking on the street and heard someone talking or even praising their cartoons, they would definitely be very happy, but Makoto Takahashi is a cartoonist full of madness. Phoenix Academy is fierce. In addition, before, he was involved in a battle between two completely irrational women. Takahashi Makoto has been ruined. Love and peace, this boring thing could have saved the world, but now it has become the source of returning the world to chaos. Raising his hands above his head, Makoto Takahashi raised his head to the sky and shouted loudly, scream, all the beings in the world who are troubled by emotions, lend me your power and let me use this energy bomb full of resentment to crush and destroy this world. Passers-by looked sideways, surprised at this strange man who suddenly roared in the middle of the road. As for Takahashi Makoto, who was spreading his Chuyuni madness unscrupulously, his irritable mood was not relieved, but became even worse. Like a ghost, he continued to wander back and forth on the pedestrian street at the door. Compared to Makoto Takahashi, who is in a state of entanglement, Yoshida is in a good mood recently. Makoto Takahashi's three monster comics have entered a stable state of performance. Inuyasha has always maintained its performance in the top 5, and occasionally it will kill it. Although it has rarely won the first place, it has never fallen out of the top 5, and Nura has entered the top 3 during this period because of the development of the Shikoku 88 Demon Night Parade. According to Yoshida's estimation, when the comic is serialized to the battle between Rikuo and Yuzhang, it should be able to win the first place. The reason why it is said to be should is that during this period, the ranking of the comic Ushio Tutora has been quite fierce. Not only has it firmly occupied the second place, but the content of the recent few chapters has a tendency to compete for the first place. Yoshida was indeed a little surprised that this comic could achieve such results. However, Yoshida did not get carried away by such results. The first two monster comics were okay, but for the comic Ushio Tutora, Yoshida couldn't help but worry. Because the story development of this comic is too compact. As a long-running comic, some daily life should be added, but in Uo and Tora, there are not too many daily life contents. After Kosio obtained the beast spear and killed the hungry monster, the whole story gradually accelerated the development speed. From the time Kosio obtained the beast spear and met Ahu, to the current serialized content, there is no delay, the whole plot is very compact, and when one story ends, the next story is introduced. Although such a development is somewhat deviated from the typical delaying method of Wangdao comics, the full main plot is quite popular with readers. Even if the style of painting is criticized, the ranking is constantly rising. If it is a pure hot-blooded battle, Yoshida is not very anxious. What Yoshida cares about is Uo and Tora with the main plot. Every time a monster appears, there is always a different reason. Whether it is a monster that simply enjoys killing or a monster that rebels because of persecution by humans, it does not follow a single repetitive route. The monsters that appear in each episode have very distinct personalities. This development model is easy for readers to accept, but as an editor, I don't agree with it. After all, a comic is about telling a story. If it is a full-line development mode, it means that the comic will be finished soon. Such a result is not what Yoshida, as an editor, is happy to see. Although Makoto Takahashi once told Yoshida that the current Ushio and Tora has not even completed one-third, Yoshida still cannot rest assured about this speed. Shonen Jump plans to hold a short story event for popular cartoonists. As Yoshida, who can participate in the serialization meeting, he naturally got the news first. At first, considering that 3 comics have been serialized at the same time, Yoshida did not intend to let Makoto Takahashi participate. Although Makoto Takahashi would definitely not agree, Yoshida is still very clear that Makoto Takahashi does not have time to draw extra comics. Even if there is time, Yoshida will never agree. After all, sacrificing Makoto Takahashi's rest time to complete a new comic to participate in an event is a business of killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. It is not cost-effective at all. Yoshida, who originally wanted to conceal this matter, suddenly remembered the short comic that Makoto Takahashi had completed before on the way to Makoto Takahashi's house. There is no restriction on the theme of this event, so no matter what the theme of the comic is, you can participate. This means that the short love comic called Tomoyo Chapter completed by Makoto Takahashi can also participate. Since there is a ready-made comic draft, there is no need to spend time drawing other comic drafts. Participating in an event may even consolidate the popularity of Fengguangai Yuan Xiongzhen, so why not? But that comic, thinking back to Makoto Takahashi's emphasis on that comic draft, Yoshida felt that if he wanted to convince Makoto Takahashi, it would be as difficult as brushing the boom dragon with a novice outfit, which is basically impossible. Yo. Ah-Cheng, I didn't expect you to be here. If it were usual, Yoshida would definitely investigate Makoto Takahashi's behavior of not drawing comics and sitting here in a daze. But today Yoshida has someone to ask for help, and his keen intuition tells him that Makoto Takahashi's current aura is quite unstable, so it is best not to do anything that is easy to be angered. My beloved cat, is my coming to this world really the choice of Steins Gate? Makoto Takahashi spoke weakly. After all, he had been wandering for an afternoon. At present, Makoto Takahashi is sitting on a bench at the door of his house, looking at Yoshida with lifeless eyes. Why is this world still so corrupt and chaotic? At the beginning, my goal was simply to change the whole world, but this world is forcing me to destroy it. Is this, really the choice of Steins Gate? Although you look very lost, Chen, At this time, you should spend more time on comics, looking at Makoto Takahashi, who is in a state of loss. Yoshida decisively took advantage of the opportunity. Ahem, if you think too much, go to face the wall. Shonen Jump will be held. Makoto Takahashi didn't listen to what Yoshida said at all, immersed in his own world. Although there is only witch-rina in his heart, this world is forcing him to take the path of scum. But scum is completely contrary to the attributes of Shuyunibu, so he must not go for the ending of a good ship hatchet. So for the battle happening at home now. To be honest, it has nothing to do with those two unrelated women, right? Why did they fight inexplicably? Makoto Takahashi was puzzled. The Jinsen winner who escaped from the identity of a magician by flying with a double, and then built the Crystal Palace, is indeed a really infuriating existence. I curse you to become the male protagonist of Double Food Diary, and then jump directly to the fate of the scumbag Makoto, and reincarnate as a concubine like King Harrington in the next life. So, admirers and secret admirers are completely unnecessary. Hey, Aiken, are you listening again? Looking at Takahashi Makoto, who was distracted, Yoshida showed a treacherous smile on his face. If you agree. As long as Rina is enough. Agree to what? The only soul of my phoenix inner Kuma is the right arm of my soul, read as Christina and written as Witch Rina. That's right, what are you hesitating and confused about? My home is where my heart is at peace. As the only destination of my soul, Witch Rina is naturally the only choice. Complete the human slaughter plan decided at the beginning as soon as possible, and then witness the demise of all mankind and the reset of the world with Witch Rina. This is the choice of Steins Gate. That's how it should be. All humans, go to hell. Ha 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 ha. The Chuyunibu's laughter of firm belief indicated that he had gotten rid of unnecessary constraints. The cartoonist named Fengguangai Yuan Kuma has obtained a new battle goal and direction. The novel A Certain Chuyunibu Cartoonist will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform, and there will also be a 100% lucky draw gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign in the upper right corner to add friends, search for the public account Dread and follow it. Hurry up. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Email. Chapter 168. P.S. If you want to hear more of your voices and receive more of your suggestions, search for the WeChat public account Dread and follow it now to give more support to A Certain Chuyuni comic artist. Because of participating in this popular cartoonist short story festival, Makoto Takahashi and Yoshida are arguing. The reason for the dispute is naturally the comics to be used for the competition. Yoshida suggested that Makoto Takahashi use the previously completed Tomoyo chapter to participate in the competition. Yoshida has already read this short story. Although many places are not explained clearly, this short and concise story is indeed very exciting, and the relationship described in it is indeed very touching. Of course, there is another most important reason. Yoshida believes that serializing 3 comics at the same time is already Makoto Takahashi's limit. Instead of letting Makoto Takahashi rack his brains to conceive a new comic, it is better to use the previously drawn comics directly to participate. After all, Yoshida has not read the content of the new comics and does not know, and cannot judge whether it is good or bad based on the content. If this activity distracts Takahashi Makoto and causes the ranking of the 3 comics that are currently gaining momentum to drop, then it would be a real loss. This is also the main reason why Yoshida insisted. Although what you said makes sense, but, no, my cat. The Cho chapter has a very important meaning. Takahashi Makoto agrees with Yoshida's ideas, but agreeing is agreeing, which does not mean that he has to implement it. The Cho chapter witnessed the existence of Lord Howin Kuma and the witch. Even my believers and followers cannot spy on them at will, let alone those common people, but speaking of it. Feeling Takahashi Makoto's murderous gaze, Yoshida couldn't help but feel uneasy and subconsciously moved back. There is a legend in the other world that the quickest way to erase memory is for the caster to cast the ultimate heaven and earth creation strike on the head of the person being cast. At some point, Takahashi Makoto, who was speaking, had already grasped the wooden sword in his hand, and the smile on his face gradually became a little ferocious. Say, my cat, don't look so scared. Because you saw something you shouldn't have seen, so, you know. Yoshida, who was pale, was silent for a moment, and deliberately changed the subject to avoid the ending of not being able to leave a suicide note in time. But the problem is, now is the time to start. Is there enough time to start creating a new short story? I won't attend this year's annual meeting. Instead of attending that boring gathering of ordinary people, I'd rather draw comics at home. Takahashi Makoto put down the wooden sword and didn't explain too much about the new short story. So the new short story, you can get it when you enter the barrier on the agreed day. Of course, if you insist on using Joe Arc, then. I haven't thought of my last words yet, nor have I made any preparations for the afterlife. Yoshida, whose IQ soared instantly, gave the best answer that Takahashi Makoto expected in his heart. Yoshi, it's a happy decision, my cat. Takahashi Makoto's hideous smile faded away, leaving behind a shy smile like a boy next door. Ahem, because of the eye mask on his face, Yoshida has another name for this smile, Takahashi Makoto's devilish smile. Sending away Yoshida, who looked gloomy like constipation, Takahashi Makoto began to consider what new short story to draw for this competition. Speed of Seconds is actually a very good choice. Moreover, Makoto Takahashi really wants to know, after drawing this short story, will there be more excited readers like in the previous life, who will raise their arms and kill the white snake, and then shout that the sky is dead? Huang Tian, ahem, it should be to mobilize the masses and devote their limited lives to the infinite business of bombing trains. Speed of Seconds, with the theme of love, uses the changes of the times to drive the changes of the characters' personalities and lives, and perfectly blends the innocent love of youth and the imperfect ending of a sigh. In terms of category, the success of Speed of Seconds may be more due to nostalgia. After all, in the process of growing up slowly throughout one's life, one will gradually lose some very important things. The love and friendship that passed by, when lost, was because of youthful frivolity and ignorance, so there would not be too many regrets. However, when it really came to its senses, it was too late, and what was missed could not be recovered, and became a regret. This may also be the price of human growth. Firefly Forest is also a good choice. Although it is slightly different from Speed, it is indeed a good existence in terms of its content, and in terms of the ending, it should be said that it is in line with Makoto Takahashi's ideal of the king of healing love. Jin was originally a human being. After being abandoned by his parents, he should have died, but he survived because of the sympathy of the mountain god and the magic of the mountain god. However, he also carried the curse that he could not be touched by humans. Once he came into contact with humans, he would disappear. The story begins with the little lowly Taikawa Hotaru, who met the monster Jin because she got lost. At that time, Hotaru, who was still a little lowly, came to her grandfather's house in the mountains in the summer and met Jin in the mountains because she got lost. At first, they were just playmates in the game, but as they played together year after year, and Hotaru began to grow up slowly, the feelings between one person and one monster slowly fermented and sublimated. The transformation from friendship to love has been overused by many comic novels, but there is no doubt that such a development is in line with the mainstream of the times. However, the ending of Firefly takes the entire story to a new level. Jin invites Hotaru to participate in the Monster Summer Festival, leaving a beautiful memory for Hotaru, which also hints at the already doomed ending. Because Yin accidentally touched a human child, the mountain god's curse took effect. The silver is starting to disappear. If it were a normal romance novel comic, at this time, the hero and heroine would definitely burst into tears, pleadingly saying words like "Don't disappear, don't leave," but the ending of Firefly didn't have such a bloody plot, because in the last moment before disappearing, Yin spread his arms, smiled and said to Firefly, "Come here, Firefly, I can finally touch you." Such words. This ending is instantly healing, isn't it? But if you choose this comic, what will Niang Kao Sanzan do? Should we say that the original work is indeed the same author? There are some conflicts in the settings. After this short story comes out, the future Niang Kao Sanzan will be somewhat repetitive. The dog monster that represents spring has appeared. As a pet owner, you can't favor one thing over another, right? Ruri-chan can be resentful. Looking at Liulai, who kept acting coquettishly in his arms, Takahashi Makoto sighed and planned to give up this very healing short comic. Wait a minute, I remember, I don't think my cat has ever said that each cartoonist can only submit one short story, right? Makoto Takahashi showed a smile on his face as if he had discovered a new toy, and gently stroked the baby in his arms. Liulai, well, I've decided happily. Let's try this popular cartoonists short story festival first, just think of it as a warm-up for the future showdown plan. At the cartoonist New Year's meeting held by the editorial department of Uish's Shounen Jump, the silver-haired brother Fukuda, because his editor Yujiro did not allow him to participate in this short story event, made a lot of noise at the venue where the event was held. Successfully obtained the qualification to participate. At the same time, because of brother Fukuda's commotion, several participating cartoonists discovered an interesting thing. The cartoonists participating in the competition actually chose comics with love themes. Is it true that all cartoonists are in need of love? Because of lack, I yearn for it. Sure enough, Makoto Takahashi, who changed his job and became a wife control, his image instantly became taller. As the editor-in-chief, he naturally has extraordinary courage. After learning from Yoshida that Makoto Takahashi also planned to participate in the competition with romance works, he decided to change the short story festival of popular cartoonists into a short story competition of popular cartoonists' romance comics. But after hearing the news, Yoshida showed a confused look on his face. The reason is very simple. Yoshida has not given up on his original idea and still wants to let Takahashi Makoto use the Tomoyo arc comic to participate in this short duel. Although Takahashi Makoto had previously said that he would draw new comics to participate in this short story festival, at that time, neither of them knew that this short story festival would turn into a romance manga showdown. If the new comic that Takahashi Makoto has worked so hard to draw is not based on the theme of love, then, when Yoshida thought of this, his face was filled with bitterness. Sea Otter didn't care anymore, and directly confessed to the editor, transformed into a naked existence, and went directly to Takahashi Makoto's house. Feeling uneasy, Yoshida carefully told Takahashi Makoto what happened at the annual meeting, and then carefully and euphemistically proposed again that since there is a need for love-themed comics, he hoped Takahashi Makoto could publish the manga Tomoyo arc. After all, the story of Tomoyo chapter completely fits the theme of this short showdown. Really? Has it turned into a battle among all the romance comics? After listening to Yoshida's story, Makoto Takahashi showed a thoughtful expression on his face. Just when Yoshida thought that his plan was going to succeed, Makoto Takahashi showed a strange smile and looked at Yoshida with a playful expression. "Tisk, tisk, tisk, my companion cat, you planned this time, right? Why? Are you still obsessed with Tomoyo chapter?" This has nothing to do with me." Yoshida quickly shook his head in denial and tried to change the subject. "Now is not the time to talk about it. You said before that you would draw a new comic draft, but if the new comic is not a love-themed comic, will not be eligible to participate in this event, so Chen, you should be honest and hand over the manga manuscript of Tomoyo chapter." Although everything went smoothly, Yoshida didn't dare to show it on his face. God knows what kind of unusual convulsions Makoto Takahashi would do. Although Yoshida is sure that Makoto Takahashi will never give up participating in this event, the editor-in-chief has decided that if the comics participating in the event have the wrong theme, they will not be able to enter this event. And Yoshida can be sure that Takahashi Makoto did not know that the theme of this comic would change from unlimited to a love theme. Therefore, the probability that the comics Takahashi Makoto drew before was a love comic is very low. My familiar cat, I forgot to ask you before, can I participate as long as it's a love-themed comic? Makoto Takahashi showed an expectant smile on his face, just like the big bad wolf seeing Little Red Riding Hood. Of course, at this time, do you still want to bluff? Looking at Makoto Takahashi's confident face, Yoshida couldn't help but be startled, but he gave up the uneasy thoughts in the blink of an eye. Although Takahashi Makoto has always said that he has the superpower to predict the future, Yoshida just treats it as a delusion of a middle school boy. By the way, does this ability really exist? All this is indeed the choice of Steins Gate. Ha ha ha. He rubbed his swollen right eye, because the side effects of staying up late for a long time began to show. But after getting Yoshida's affirmative answer, Takahashi Makoto was excited and completely ignored the fatigue of his body. Takahashi Makoto showed an expectant smile, pulled out a thick stack of drawings from the desk, and handed it to Yoshida, who was in a state of surprise. This is the comic manuscript, your unexpected love comic, my beloved cat. Firefly Forest and Another World Apricot Arc, et. Wait, Yoshida just flipped through it roughly and found the problem. Just as Takahashi Makoto expected, Yoshida was surprised. Why are there two comics? And isn't the male protagonist of the second comic Okazaki Tomoya from the previous Tomoyo arc? What's so surprising? Didn't you say before that any comic with a love theme can participate? Takahashi Makoto ignored Yoshida's twitching mouth, and looked innocent. Then the next step is handed over to my beloved cat? Of course, if you still want the Tomoyo arc now, I have another comic here. If 4 comics participate, it will definitely be very lively. Takahashi Makoto, you plotted against me. This is called Takahashi Makoto's counterattack. Yoshida-kun, can you feel it? Huh? Calculated you? This is all your own fault, my beloved cat. Takahashi Makoto used his own way to return the favor. Yoshida's catchphrase "you deserve it" was returned intact. However, Takahashi Makoto really wants to know, is the dictionary Emperor invincible, or is the human demon love song better? The novel A Certain Secondary Cartoonist will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform, and there will also be 100% lucky draw gifts for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign add friends in the upper right corner, search for the public account Dread and follow it. Hurry up. I apologized yesterday for not updating in time because I was on a business trip and only came back tonight. I am really sorry. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Mao. Chapter 169. After submitting 2 comics to the Love Short Story Festival, Takahashi Makoto continued to devote his energy to the 3 comics that were being serialized. As Yoshida expected, Nura, Ghost finally surpassed the previously aggressive Ushio Totoro in the episode where Rikuo and Yuzhang confronted each other, and successfully won the first place. Ushio Totoro, unwilling to be overtaken, also tried its best to chase. In the content of the episode serialized at the same time, the difference between the two was only a single digit in the number of votes in the statistical ranking. Yashiro Mumanai had nothing to say. After all, the subject matter restricted the development. PCP, which was not quite in line with the theme of Shonen Jump, could always stick to the top 10. Naturally, it was the result of the firm belief of Landai and Huangmao Glasses and their own unremitting efforts. Nizuma Ag once again used the fusion strategy. he let the two comics under his command interact with each other. This approach has been tried before, so the results achieved this time were not as good as expected, but he also took this opportunity to enter the top 3. The main characters of the two comics actually appear in the same comic. Although it's not the first time I've seen it, this kind of scene is really exciting. Isn't this trick of Nazuma Ag good? Yoshida pointed at the crow in this episode and showed a weird smile on his face. The expression was, well, it was the same look often used by instigators. Yoshida kept encouraging Takahashi Makoto, "Ah-chan, your 3 comics are all based on monsters, so this kind of thing can be done, right? Tisk tisk tisk, by the way, I should be the first one to use fusion summons, right? The Black Flame King is really..." After closing this issue of Shonen Jump, Takahashi Makoto looked expectant. Well, there is still some time before the super fusion is activated. During this time, let's observe the moving scene of Hotaru and Apricot killing each other. Killing each other, huh? Yoshida's smile froze, and he looked at Takahashi Makoto in disbelief. Although he had already understood a little bit in his heart, he pretended not to understand and asked, "Ah-chan, the killing of each other you are talking about, can't it be prohibited matters?" Putting his finger on his lips, Takahashi Makoto raised the corner of his mouth, signaling Yoshida not to ask any more questions. Could it be? Yoshida's face was full of black lines. Recalling the 2 comics submitted before, the ominous premonition became stronger and stronger, and his face showed a crazy look of hindsight. "I knew that you submitted 2 comics on purpose. You planned this from the beginning." Using silence to change the subject, Takahashi Makoto is very familiar with this. Under Yoshida's speechless gaze, Takahashi Makoto completely ignored the topic discussed before, picked up the 3 comic manuscripts on the table by himself, and showed a fanatical expectation on his face. "The most important thing now is to let me think about the timing of the launch of Super Fusion. Once the Super Fusion is launched, the whole world will kneel at the feet of the crazy cartoonist Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma, ha 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 ha." The popular short story duel held by Shonen Jump is naturally to attract more readers, and after changing it to a Love Short Story Festival, it attracted more readers than expected. Because love, this unique existence, has accompanied the development of human history and culture, and has experienced the baptism of years, and now there is still no sign of decline. Misaki's parents are busy with work all day long. In that mansion that symbolizes wealth and luxury, Misaki is the only one at home except for the servants. Because of the lack of communication with peers, Misaki reads a lot of romance novels to kill time. As a result, she always fantasizes that she can also have an unforgettable love. Ahem, in short, this is the legendary secret technique, psychological suggestion. Just like after reading Dream Eater, I want to find a good friend and embark on the road of cartoonists together. After reading Dragon Ball, I want to become a Super Saiyan who can blow up the earth with one punch. After reading Hikaru no Go, I want to keep a cute ghost named Sai in captivity and embark on the journey of dominating the Go world. The appeal of comics is irresistible to Makoto Takahashi in his past and present lives. How many people like comics and also begin to yearn for the things that happen in comics to happen to themselves? The same is true for Misaki. Because she has read too many romance novels, she naturally has a little expectation for love. As her precocious girl's heart awakens, Misaki naturally has endless yearning for love. The plots and bloody plots described in the novels will not be discussed for the time being, but which girl does not hope that reality can also encounter a romantic love like in the novel? This young lady who never reads comics usually does not buy Shonen Jump. After all, liking novels does not mean liking comics. Although Misaki couldn't help her curiosity and bought a special issue of Shonen Jump home after seeing the Love Short Story Festival, after returning home, Misaki's curiosity has dissipated a lot, and she regretted her previous impulse purchase of Shonen Jump. Really, why would I buy this kind of magazine? After flipping through the previous comics, Misaki frowned with some disappointment. Unlike novels, in the comics the male and female protagonists already have their appearances, so there is no way to fill in the blanks in your imagination. Therefore, for Misaki, who is used to reading novels, she is already disappointed. Mom and Dad haven't come back yet. Misaki raised her head and looked at the empty house, with a look of loss on her face. She sighed helplessly. The comic she originally planned to throw aside became her companion at this moment. Your only companion? Oh. Forget it, I'm the only one at home anyway, this magazine is used to kill time, maybe, The comic Forest of Fireflies. In order to achieve the best healing effect, Takahashi Makoto stayed up late several times to improve the quality of the drawings for Forest of Fireflies. When Misaki opened the first page, he was immediately attracted by the delicate and exquisite drawings. But what makes Misaki a little confused is that he has just started reading the manga, and the first page of the drawing is just a close-up of a shrine. Why does he feel inexplicably depressed? The story told in the comic is very simple. There is no earth-shattering event or anything that can win your favor. It is just a little loli who gets lost and encounters a strange monster. Compared with the previous comics, because of the intertwined plot of fantasy and reality, this Forest of Fireflies is more effective for Misaki, who loves fantasy. Hotaru grew from an ignorant and innocent little loli to a loving girl. This growth, even though it only took a few pages of comics, made Misaki addicted to it. Whether it was the cute little loli who wanted to touch the monster Jin at the beginning, or the girl who fell in love with Jin later, as a reader, Misaki seemed to have put herself into it, and gradually fell in love with the monster named Jin. So when I saw in the manga, when Jin invited Hotaru to attend the Yokai Summer Festival, the close-up of the smile on Hotaru's face made Misaki envious. When Jin-chan took off the mask she had been wearing on her face and fastened it on Hotaru's face, and kissed Hotaru through the mask, Misaki could feel Hotaru's joy in the manga. The person you have always been in love with finally responded to your feelings with actions. This is definitely the most beautiful gift for a girl in love. Regarding this development of lovers finally getting married, Misaki couldn't help but nod her head. At this moment, Misaki is envious and jealous of the girl named Hotaru in the manga. Ah! How could this happen? How could this happen? Looking at the comics, Jin accidentally touched a human child, triggering the mountain god's curse and gradually began to disappear. Misaki suddenly felt panicked. It's clear that our feelings have been conveyed to each other, and it's clear that a happy life is about to begin. Why is there such a plot? With a hint of extravagant hope in her heart, Misaki immediately turned to the next page of the comic manuscript, hoping that a miracle would happen and that silver would not disappear. But to Misaki's disappointment, the miracle did not appear, and the silver gradually began to disappear. Come here, Firefly. I can finally touch you. At the last moment when Yin disappeared, Firefly threw herself into Yin's arms and hugged tightly this monster who understood her own feelings. However, this love did not move the world. Monster Silver finally disappeared with a happy smile, and the painting turned into dots of light, becoming fireflies dotting the forest. When Yin said those last words, he didn't cry sadly because of parting, but because he could finally touch Hotaru, he smiled happily. Hugging and kissing, which is so common between lovers, is such a luxury for the lovers Yin and Yang. How cruel is it for Yang and Jin who are in love that they already understand each other's feelings, but they can't get along like normal lovers. The last 2 pages of the manga brought an end to the love between Jin and Hotaru. The happiness within reach, with the sadness of parting, successfully ignited Misaki's tear ducts, allowing those who witnessed the love between Jin and Hotaru to Misaki, unable to restrain her inner depression and sadness any longer, burst into tears. If I want to hug you, then I will lose you. But, being able to hug you, even if it's parting, I won't be sad at all. Because of the ending of the Forest of Hotaru, she was severely cured by the Phoenix Academy. Misaki, a sentimental girl, did not break away from the relationship between Jin and Hotaru after crying, and her heart was filled with feeling unspeakable depression. I didn't even dare to close my eyes. Because once you close your eyes, the scene of Yin finally disappearing will keep appearing in your mind. The cell phone next to her suddenly rang. Misaki looked at the caller ID and found that she was her best friend. Misaki, who was still immersed in sadness, was not very interested. Before she answered the phone, she heard her best friend's hoarse voice. Listening to the voice of her best friend who had clearly cried, even Misaki, who was immersed in sadness, felt a little surprised. Misaki, I. He stuttered and couldn't even speak completely, which made Misaki on the phone anxious. Kanan-chan, what happened? Misaki's voice also surprised Kanan on the other side of the phone. Misaki, I just watched. Although Kanan was a little choked when she spoke, she still made Misaki understand the whole story after telling it intermittently. The reason is still the fierce manga of Phoenix Academy, but it is not the story of Forest of Fireflies, but the story of Apricot Chapter. It has almost the same development as Apricot Chapter. The emotional story of the Fujibayashi sisters also takes place in reality, but this time it becomes the two sisters Kanan and Kazuki. Although the boy directly rejected Hua Li's confession and bluntly said that the person he liked was Hua Yin, it also made the relationship between the two sisters become strangers. Unlike in the comics, in reality, Hana's sister Hana has always been upset about this incident, and has never spoken to her sister Hana since then. Although Hana tried her best, she still couldn't ease the relationship between her and her sister. And because of this incident, Hana felt deeply guilty, and her relationship with her lover was not very pleasant. There is no right or wrong in the world of love. But because of her own reasons, her sister couldn't get along with the person she had always loved. After knowing this, Hana also felt guilty, but she didn't know how to explain this to her sister. This story isn't. And didn't say anything else, because Misaki knew that this kind of thing of rubbing salt into other people's wounds is very immoral. Hana also read this comic. After that, she said to me, "Sister, I'm sorry." Hana was already crying, just a short sentence, but this time Misaki could hear that Hana was crying with joy. Hanaru has forgiven me, Hanaru has forgiven me. That's great. After hanging up the phone, Misaki's previous sadness was diluted a lot because of Kanan's matter. After calming down, Misaki decided to take a look at this comic. Just with the comic, the Kanan sisters were able to reconcile. Although I don't know who the author is yet, Misaki is grateful to him now. How Winkuma, it can't be the same person. Turning to Apricot, looking at this familiar yet unfamiliar name, Misaki couldn't help but be stunned, and quickly turned to Firefly, with a look of surprise on her face. It's really the same person. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 170. In this love short story competition, cartoonist Hao Winkuma submitted 2 works. This behavior may be very unfair to other cartoonists, but the editor-in-chief rejected the criticism and allowed 2 comics to participate in the competition together. The rules of the competition do not limit each cartoonist to submit only 1 comic. Facing the questions of many editors and other cartoonists, the editor-in-chief answered domineeringly, "As long as it is within the specified time, any number of comics is fine." So Hao Winkuma submitted 2 comics within the specified time, which is also fine. But editor-in-chief, if it is according to what you said, as long as the works can be submitted within the specified time. Editor Aida showed a trace of anger on his face. After all, in this love short story competition, their group only participated in 1 cartoonist's comic. Compared with Yoshida's group, there is a big difference in the number of people and works. Therefore, after learning about the number of participants and the number of works, Aida immediately found the editor-in-chief, then I understand that participating cartoonists can also submit multiple works. Of course you can. The editor-in-chief was not angry because of Aida's behavior. His face and tone were completely in line with Aida's behavior. I have said before that comics can be interesting. The two comics of Hao Winkuma are indeed very interesting. You did not raise any objections in the previous meeting. But Aida still wanted to try to defend himself. It's okay for Mr. Hiramaru, but Mr. Howin. Aida, if you insist on doing this. Yoshida, who had been watching the development of the matter, showed a dark smile on his face and interrupted faintly, Teacher Howin, there are still 2 love short comics that have not been submitted. Ah, what a pity. If it weren't for the simultaneous serialization of 3 comics, maybe Mr. Howin would submit more than 6 comics this time. 6. Aida was completely shocked by Yoshida's statement. Looking at Yoshida with disbelief, Aida's tone was full of suspicion. Yoshida, don't joke. How could it be possible to, 6 comics in a few months? Aida naturally didn't believe it completely. Yoshida's statement was too exaggerated. It takes a lot of time for a cartoonist to conceive a story, and it is a story with a limited love theme, plus the time it takes to complete the comic manuscript, 6 comics, this statement is really unconvincing. Don't look at me like that, I didn't believe it at the time. In response to Aida's doubts, Yoshida spread his hands, with a wicked smile on his face, and explained to the editor-in-chief who was waiting and watching, but that guy Aiken roughly told me the content of the comics, and the main characters were also drawn, 6 comics, just considering the tight time of this event, it is a conservative estimate. If calculated according to the stories and characters that have been constructed, the number is far more than 6 comics. Hey, Aida, if Mr. Feng Guangaiyuan knew that it can be submitted without limit, then the consequences. Threat, this is a blatant threat. Aida glanced at Yoshida with an unhappy expression, and stopped dwelling on this issue. Hao Winkuma, this cartoonist is different from other cartoonists. He cannot communicate with any normal reason, and his behavior is beyond the cognition of ordinary people. If he continues to pester the works participating in the event, maybe that monster Hao Winkuma will directly give up serialization and turn the battlefield to this short story event of Love Duel. Aida believes that Hao Winkuma can definitely do this kind of thing. However, looking at the special issue on the table, Aida's face turned from gloomy to sunny. Submitting 2 articles at the same time by the same cartoonist will definitely reduce the support rate of readers. Originally, the popularity that could be gathered by 1 comic with the fame of the cartoonist has to be divided into 2 comics now. I think the result will not be too good. Although the number of comics has increased, the quality. Thinking of this, Aida is no longer as anxious as before, but looks at Yoshida with gloating. Should we say that the editorial department of Shonen Jump is efficient, or should we say that this love short story is highly anticipated? The result of this love short story duel was soon handed over to the editors of the participating cartoonists. Firefly Forest ranked 2nd, and Apricot ranked 3rd, and the votes they received were almost the same. Yoshida can understand such a result. After all, although the 2 comics are about the same love theme, 1 comic ends with tears and healing, and the other ends with healing and tears, so the support rate of the 2 comics will naturally be different. But what makes Yoshida feel most regretful is that the results of the 2 comics are only 6 votes away from the first place. Oh, this is unexpectedly a pity. Yoshida looked at the score report he had just received, with a helpless expression on his face. Should I say that Cheng deserved it? Or did he deserve it? This result is really, ahaha. What a pity. If Mr. Feng Guangaiyuan had only submitted 1 comic this time, the first place would definitely be a sure thing. Hattori looked at the ranking list in his hand, with a look of regret on his face. Ashiro Mumanai is really not suitable for this theme. Hee. Although the Phoenix Academy teacher did not get first place, but looking at the performance statistics in his hand, Yujiro looked a little dumbfounded. Shinzuma-kun was in 6th place, and Fukuda-kun was in last place. Before sure enough, Mr. Fusion should not be allowed to participate in such activities. This first place is really a fluke. Looking at the transcript, Aida showed a happy expression. Looking at Yoshida, who was a little depressed over there, Aida looked a little apologetic. I used to complain that Phoenix Academy Kuma submitted 2 works by himself, but now judging from the results. Although Miss Kang Shuhong successfully won the first place this time, Aida knows that if Phoenix Academy Kuma only submits 1 manga this time, the first place will definitely not be from this side. After all, in this voting, each reader can only vote for 1 comic. Judging from the results, the support rate of the 2 comics of Phoenix Academy Fierce is almost the same as that of the comic that won the first place. The 2 comics were evenly divided. After the support rate, he was still able to reach the top 3. What does this mean? Although he is a little reluctant, Aida knows that either of the 2 comics of Phoenix Academy is better than Aoki Hong's. Although it was said at the meeting before that the top 3 comics can submit corresponding serialization manuscripts and enter the serialization meeting. But the editor-in-chief crossed his hands and supported his chin, and his flat glasses reflected an inexplicable fierce light, given that the manga artist Hohoin Kuma has already serialized 3 comics at the same time, so this time the 2 comics Forest of Fireflies and Another World anime will no longer be included in the discussion of new serializations. For such a result, Yoshida was not unwilling, but showed a faint look of expectation. Although Takahashi Makoto's comics cannot be serialized, it doesn't matter. Little Sea Otter's comics ranked 4th this time. After excluding the 2 comics by Makoto Takahashi, the comics of Little Sea Otter can naturally also enter the discussion scope of the serialization meeting. Unlike Takahashi Makoto, after the completion of Little Sea Otter, he fell into a state of doing nothing. He was unwilling to draw any new manga manuscripts. No matter how Yoshida tried to seduce him, Little Sea Otter shook his head and refused. The reason why he participated in the event this time was entirely because Yoshida used Kang Shuhong as bait to lure the Little Sea Otter, but the following serialization. No. Absolutely not. Just as Yoshida had expected, the Little Sea Otter's resistance was very strong. When Yoshida asked Little Sea Otter to draw a manga manuscript for serialization, Little Sea Otter firmly disagreed. I want to rest. Now that Sea Otter is over, I need to rest for at least 2 years. I am not your dog, Yoshida family, nor is I a slave of Yoshida family. I continue to draw comics like this day and night. I will die. Hiramaru-kun, as long as you draw the manga manuscript for serialization this time, I can arrange a party for you. One with many beauties. As usual, Yoshida firmly grasped the weakness of the Little Sea Otter and threw out bait. Yoshida looked at the agitated Little Sea Otter, and a devilish smile appeared on his face unconsciously. He took out a thick stack of photos from his arms and said, "It's a good deal. 3 comic manuscripts can be exchanged for a chance to socialize. And here there are also photos. I won't be deceived by Yoshida's plan." Although the Little Sea Otter tried hard to turn his head and look to the side, his tone of voice was obviously very hesitant. The Little Sea Otter used the patience skill and tried to charm the photo in Yoshida's hand. "Yoshida, you said this before, but the woman who came that time was completely different from the one in the photo. Instead of relying on Yoshida's help, it's better to pray to the Lord of the Phoenix Academy." "Ah, the call from the Lord of the Phoenix Academy is here. You must have felt my hardship and reached out to help me." Yoshida looked at the happy Little Sea Otter with a look of sympathy on his face. When facing the Little Sea Otter, if Yoshida is evil, then Makoto Takahashi is definitely the emperor who shakes his body. The 2 are not on the same level at all. At least Yoshida is trying his best to make Little Sea Otter continue to be serialized, and Makoto Takahashi, although he will also try his best to make Little Sea Otter work hard to serialize, but in terms of means, he is definitely 100 times more cruel than himself. According to Makoto Takahashi, the pleasure that comes from fooling the little sea otter, this pleasure that comes from the soul and mood, is something that you mortals cannot understand. What? Really? The little sea otter's exclamation made Yoshida come out of the memory mode. Although he didn't know what Makoto Takahashi said to the little sea otter, Yoshida was completely filled with sympathy when he saw the happy expression on the little sea otter's face. He actually believed in Makoto Takahashi, who came from the S-Star. This idiot, little sea otter, is completely hopeless. Right now Mr. Yoshida is with me. Well, I will definitely come to visit you in person. I'm very grateful, Lord Phoenix Academy. I don't know what Makoto Takahashi said to the little sea otter, who smiled with a smile on his face. He cut off the phone and looked at Yoshida with a silly smile. Mr. Yoshida, I will definitely work hard to draw the manga manuscripts required for serialization. Damn it! What happened? The little sea otter, who looked reluctant just now, actually offered to draw a manga just because of a call from Makoto Takahashi. This change of attitude surprised Yoshida and he almost bit his own tongue. Although Yoshida wanted to find out what happened, the little otter was unusually persistent this time and kept his mouth shut. No matter what bait Yoshida gave, he refused to reveal anything. Instead, he kept muttering, "The Phoenix God is indeed a god," and so on. Even when he was drawing comics, he would stop from time to time and giggle alone. The contrasting behavior of the little otter made Yoshida completely confused. Is this the legendary brainwashing ability of the second year? The Pete is too cruel. Sorry, something happened at home during this period, and the update is not stable. I hope you will forgive me.